Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We have an update with UNIGOLD, and CEO Joe Hamilton's here with me today, which I'm really excited about because the share price has done phenomenally well since the deal that they did in June. So looking forward to getting an update. Before we get started, a couple things. First off, there will be a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to put your Q&A in the Q&A box below, and we'll address those questions at the end of the presentation. And this presentation will contain forward-looking statements, so if you'd like to know more about those, you can check them out on the company's disclosure on their website. I will note that the updated presentation is on the website. It's got the new branding, but we're not fully done the rebrand yet, so the website's old, but it should be changed over the next week or two on the data. So Joe, with that, I would like to ask you to take us through the UNIGOLD story and tell us what's changed. I think you're starting drilling soon.
Here's the first slide. As I go through, I'll be able to update people on what we're doing in the Dominican Republic. Slide 2 is the forward-looking statements. I'll leave that to let people read that at your will, but some of the things I'm saying will be forward-looking statements and projections. If we go to slide 3, UNIGOLD currently has a resource, a low-grade resource of about 2 million ounces at 1.6 grams of gold per ton in the Dominican Republic. That resource is, was put out in 2013, but once again, fairly low grade. A lot of the work that we've done since 2013 has shown that there's higher grade mineralization, and that's what we're focusing on at this point. We've drilled over 120,000 meters to date in the Dominican Republic, so a fairly extensive drill database. We've noticed that buried within the lower grade mineralization, there are 3 or 4 higher grade shoots. And those are the things we've been concentrating on since 2016. Our last drill program had about a 90% hit rate in 14,000 meters of drilling. We're able to target this mineralization. We understand the geometry and the geology, and we're quite confident that the resource that we have can be increased. There was a 2015 resource that we put out, which just looked at the higher grade material, and it was about 900,000 ounces at about 5 grams for that material. We currently have just over $6 million in the bank, and there's multiple drill-ready targets on the concession, although for the rest of this year, we'll just be concentrating on the CANDELONES mineralization, which is the high-grade material that we've been drilling over the last, drilling between October and March, and which will commence drilling next week again. If you go to slide 4, I'll show you the management. I'm the chairman and the chief executive officer. I took over as CEO in October last year. I'm a geologist, an exploration geologist, but also have a CFA and a PGO in Ontario. Wes Hansen is our chief operating officer. Wes also is a PGO. Wes has been involved with numerous mine developments. He was CEO of Noront for a number of years. He's worked with Western Goldfields. He's worked with SNC Lavalin on feasibility studies. He's fairly experienced and has been overseeing all of this work since 2015 on this concession. Our chief financial officer, Donna McLean, joined us when our previous chief financial officer retired earlier this year. And Helga Fairhurst is our corporate secretary, who's been doing a bang-up job with a lot of warrant exercises that we've had over the last month and a half from a previous financing. Move on to the board of directors. We currently have 7 directors on the board. Once again, I'm the chairman. Joe Del Campo is the director of the audit, or he's a director and chairman of the audit committee. Joe was one of the founders of this company. He's been involved with the company for 20 years. He used to work at Falconbridge with Falconbridge Dominicana, which was a nickel laterite operation in the Dominican Republic. Joe is a resident of Canada and a citizen of Canada as well. Charlie Page is our lead director. Because I'm occupying both the chairman and the CEO role, corporate governance dictates that we have a lead director. Charlie is the lead independent director. He's been involved with the company since 2010, and he's also a director of Osisko Mining. Ruben Padilla is director of the board. He came on the board about 5 years ago. He's an exploration geologist as well with significant Latin American experience. Jean-Marc Lacoste is on the board. Jean-Marc is the CEO of Monarch Gold, who had a fairly extensive ownership in the company in 2019 and early 2020. Jean-Marc came on the board to help us with moving the company forward. Jose Acero is also on the board. He is a resident in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, and he's our eyes and ears on the ground in that country. And Norman is also a shareholder. He at one point owned about 15% of the company, but a significant shareholder also on the board. If you go to slide 6, the capital structure, we currently have 125 million shares outstanding. We've had a large number, about 10 million warrants have been exercised in the last month and a half from a financing that we did last year. So we're currently at 125 million outstanding. There's about 5 million warrants left from that financing from last September. There are 19 million warrants outstanding from a financing we just completed at the beginning of July. Those expire in 2 years, and they're at 30 cents, although there are some broker warrants at 18 cents as well. There's about 4.6 million options outstanding. Those expire over the next 3 years at various times. Those are all management options. So fully diluted, it's about 154 million shares outstanding. Eric Sprott owns about 15% of the company. At this point in time, he does have some warrants from the June-July financing we just completed, which would bring him up to about 17 or 18% of the company. Cisco continues to hold about 7%, and the officers and directors collectively own about 5.6%. Just to set the table and go over what we're trying to achieve in 2020, there's an oxide resource, which I'll go into some detail on. It's a small resource, but it sits at surface, and it's low-hanging fruit. It recovers well in heap and in column tests, and it should be a low capital project to put into production. It'll be around 120,000 ounces of material that we should be able to recover from that. So the objective on the oxides is to drill it out in M&I. We've done that. We should have the resource statement. Micon was updating the resource statement on the oxides. Hopefully that'll be out in the next week or two. We've completed the metallurgical work on that. We want to do a little bit more geotechnical work to finalize the pit and tailings design. That'll be in progress starting next week when the drills are operating again. And then by the end of the year, we'd like to be able to deliver some form of an economic study. That economic study will most likely be a PFS, and we'll use that to support an application for a mining license on the entire project, which, if we get a mining license, that would give us 75 years of tenure for the project. The underlying sulfide resource, earlier this year, we did a bunch of infill drilling to move that into measured and indicated category. We'll be doing an update at some point on the sulfide resource, but I think it will most likely be after the next round of drilling, which, as I said, commences next week. We've done the first phase of detailed metallurgical studies to finalize a process design. The first phase worked well and gave us a lot of encouragement on the coarse grain sulfide mineralization that we're targeting. So we'll complete phase 2 of that in the second half of the year. We want to do some geotechnical work this year because these sulfides, as you'll see what I show you in long section, will most likely be accessed using underground mining methods. And we want to make sure that we've got a ramp position and an area to put a ramp in and well defined. And then ultimately what we want to achieve this year is to expand that sulfide mineralization to up to 2 million ounces in all categories using a 3-gram cutoff. I think we're well on our way to doing that. We're probably over 1 million ounces at this point with the drilling that we've done. And I think over the next round, we should be able to get that towards the 2 million ounce target. We, of course, are going to keep going with our CSR programs in country. This is a very important part of any exploration or mining company that's doing work in any country to be able to keep community engagement. There was an election at the beginning of July. There was a new government that came in, a new president, as well as a new cabinet. They will be sworn in this coming Sunday on the 16th and start taking over the reins. The new government is pro-mining. Certainly after the COVID scare, tourism in the Dominican Republic has gone to almost zero. And the government realizes that some of the mining operations that are in the country have been supporting them with tax payments, et cetera. And the new government has said repeatedly that they would like to ensure that there's more mines operating in the country in order to support the economy. And something else we'll do later on this year is start a national engagement program, which will hopefully let most of the country of the Dominican Republic know what we're intending on doing, and we'll be able to address any concerns that may come out of that as we go through it. For those of you not familiar with the Dominican Republic, we are, our concession, the NEITA concession, is on the west side, close to the Haitian border. The island of Hispaniola is split into two countries, Haiti on the west and the Dominican Republic on the east. We are, once again, close to the Dominican Republic. The star in the center of the Dominican Republic is where three of the operating mines in the country, Pueblo Viejo, which is owned 60-40 by Barrick and Newmont, arguably Barrick's #1 standalone mine. They are going through a fairly large capital program to take that up to about 1 million ounces a year at all-in sustaining costs of around $700 to $800 an ounce. So a very profitable mine for Barrick, very profitable mine for Newmont, and for the government of the Dominican Republic. Also in that same valley is Falcondo, which is owned by Glencore, which is a nickel laterite operation. It starts and stops with the nickel price. And then there's also the Cerro de Mimol mine, which is there. That is a small copper gold mine, a small VMS that is mined by an Australian company that's owned by a Chinese investment company. The main, Santo Domingo is the capital on the south coast. Santiago in the center is probably the next largest city. There are 5 international airports in the country, a number of deep water ports. It's self-sufficient in electrical power, and arguably the Dominican Republic has the most diversified economy in the Caribbean with agriculture. They have exports of agricultural products, tobacco, rum, certainly a large tourism industry pre-COVID, but they also export gemstones. They're a large gold producer, and good infrastructure, good power, good workforce, good roads. There is an established mining law in the Dominican Republic. It's fairly clear and fairly straightforward. As far as the tax regimen is concerned, there's a 5% export duty on finished metal that is exported out of the country. That includes gold. The income tax is specified when the mining license is set, and it's reset every 25 years. So in effect, this allows the government to set the tax rate for mining operations such that they don't become, let's say they won't kill projects by putting excessive tax rates on them. So those are reviewed during the mining license application process. UNIGOLD'S Dominican advantage. We own our own drills in the Dominican Republic. We have very low drilling cost because we use Dominican drillers. It's about $125 a meter as an all-in cost, exceptionally low. That includes assays and geological support. We have a relatively low burn rate corporately. It's about $150,000 a month when we're not drilling. Once the drilling costs go up, those become variable, of course. Our drilling rates are very good using the locally trained drillers that we have. We can do between 1,500 and 1,800 meters per month using those 2 drill rigs. We've ordered 2 other drill rigs, which are being shipped to the country. They should be operational by the middle of September. That'll take our monthly totals up to about 3,000 meters a month. We should be able to maintain that pace. We've got a great safety record. There's been very few lost time injuries. We've got over 98% of our workforce comes from the local community. Only a few expats need to be there to manage things. And we've got excellent community support in the local area. Everyone's aware of what we're doing. We keep the communities up to date and let them know what we're doing. So excellent community support. We need to move out and get provincial and national support if we're going to put in an application for a mining license, and we intend to do that over the next 6 months, the rest of this year. Slide 10 shows the NEITA concession. Each of the stars is a drill-ready target. We've spent most of our time in the lower section around the 3 stars that are in the lower left, the Candelones area. This concession itself is about 20,000 hectares, a little bit over 20,000 hectares. The exploration concessions in the Dominican Republic are granted for 5 years. It's 3 years plus 2 automatic 1-year renewals. Our current exploration concession comes up for renewal next year. It's usually an automatic renewal, not an issue. We'll need to reapply for the concession in 2023, in late 2023, but at that point, we expect that we'll have an application for a mining license in place, which will, if that's granted, that'll be a 75-year tenure on the property. And our environmental license was good till November of this year. The application is in to extend that so we can carry on with drilling efforts, and we expect that that should be in hand in October. To give you an idea of what the resources look like, in 2013 we put out a resource estimate which looked at a large open pit, low grade, because at that point through 2010 through 2013, we were drilling very broad intercepts of low-grade mineralization. These were 100 to 150 meters of consistent mineralization running between 1 and 2 grams. Very great mineralization. We thought it looked like an open pit. So in 2013, we put out a resource statement. It identified a near-surface oxide resource of about 110,000 ounces running at about 1 gram. And then below that, in disseminated mineralization, there was about 2 million ounces, 1.9 million ounces, which averaged about 1.6 grams of gold per ton. And that mineralization, as I said, was very consistent. The pit, though, had a fairly large strip ratio. And when we were looking at that, we did some metallurgy in 2014 and realized that while that material floated very well, it probably needed an autoclave in order to recover that material, that low-grade disseminated mineralization. That was a little bit discouraging in 2014. However, in 2015, when we went back and looked at all of the drilling we'd done, we realized that there were a large number of high-grade hits that were a different style of mineralization than the lower-grade disseminated. And these high-grade zones ran between 4 and 7 grams. But at 100-meter drilling, the nearest drill holes to these were sort of 100 meters away. So it required some infill drilling to understand what we were dealing with. But we did do a resource in 2015 on the sulfides. That showed about 900,000 ounces at about 5.2 grams of gold per ton in the higher grade sulfides. And these higher grade sulfides were coarse grained. They had copper and zinc and silver signatures to them, much different than the lower grade mineralization that we had been drilling in 2013. And I'll show you some long sections on what that looks like. So in 2016, late 2015 and early 2016, we went back and started to target the high grade mineralization. Those resources that we put out in 2015, none of the drilling between 2016 and today has been included in that material or in that resource estimate. But we did recognize that there was an epithermal overprint, that the higher grade mineralization was much later. We've tracked 3 feeder zones, which we've managed to trace to depth. It looks like we've got a 4th area as well, which I'll show you shortly. But those were certainly encouraging, and that's what we've been focusing on. If you go to slide 12, which should be up on your screen now, the yellow material, which drapes over top of Candelones Hill, is the oxide mineralization. That's tropical oxide weathering. It's not like the oxides that you would find in Nevada, which are chemical oxides. This is simply superficial weathering. It's about 20 to 30 meters deep of oxide, a fairly shallow pit, but consistent mineralization. And at 1 gram, it leaches well and it's fairly high grade. The light blue stippled area that is shown here is the low-grade disseminated mineralization running between 1 gram and 2 grams that we drilled out between 2010 and 2013. And that's what the pit outline was put on, or the optimized pit resources in 2013 were put on that. But it was in 2016 through 2020 we started to concentrate on the higher grade red blobs, which are over on the right side. Those are the subvertical epithermal feeder systems we recognized, much higher grade, different style of mineralization, and they seem to be coming in and overprinting the lower grade mineralization that's here. So those are the ones that we've been concentrating on, and that's where we've been getting our higher grade hits. To give you an idea of what some of those hits look like, on slide 13, these are significant intersections from our drilling from 2016 to 2020. So it's important to realize that none of these intersections shown on this slide were included in our previous resource estimate. That resource estimate was dated 2015. All of this drilling was done afterwards. Target A is our easternmost target, or it would have been on the far right on the previous slide. The drill hole that we just put out earlier this week was 30 meters at 9 grams. Very significant hit. It's probably the best hit that we've had in the drilling to date, in the 10 years of drilling that we've done here on this property. But the most important thing to realize about that 30-meter intercept, in the press release, we also published the meter-by-meter assays. And if you go to that table in the press release from Monday, you'll see that every assay over that 30-meter interval ran between 4 grams and 17 grams. We're not smearing numbers here. There's no half a meter at 200 grams that gets smeared out into a 30-meter intercept. This is consistent mineralization over the 30 meters. In some cases, 35 to 35 meters at target A. We've got a number of 20-meter hits at fairly high grades, and once again, consistent grades over that entire width. Target A primarily seems to be gold and copper. There seems to be some zonation to the epithermal feeders. They're probably a timing, related to timing, and that target A may be an older system than target C. But at target B, which is in the center, we start seeing a little bit of silver and zinc starting to creep in. But once again, some substantial widths, 20 to 25 meters at good grades at 5 to 6 grams at target B. And at target C, which is the westernmost target, this one seems to be a little bit narrower. We're getting between 7 and 15 meters, but the grades here are consistently higher. Here we're getting 10 to 15 grams. There's more zinc and more silver coming into the system at target C as well. We get up to 1.5 ounces of silver, and in some places up to 2% zinc here as well. There was one spectacular hit we had early on in the drilling at 3 meters at 5 grams, but 3 ounces of silver there as well. So there's some zonation to the systems, but multiple elements are in here. And together, A, B, and C define about 1.5 kilometers of strike length. And we think we found a fourth target as well. I'll show you that on this slide, on slide 14. If you go to our website and download the presentation, you can zoom in on this slide. The resolution is pretty good, and you can see what some of these intercepts look like. But in effect, on the right side, target A is one of these epithermal feeders. Once again, that's where the intercept that we put on Monday came from. It's shown almost in the center. That was LP 20-147, 30 meters at 9 grams per ton. The important thing that I'd like to point out on this slide, though, between A, B, and C, is that all of this mineralization starts at about 50 to 75 meters below surface. Surface is shown here. The tick marks on the left and right side are 100-meter spacings. So about 75 meters below surface is where targets B and C start. On the left side of this slide, there's another red blob that just has 2 drill holes in it. Just has 2 drill holes in it. We think that's a fourth epithermal feeder. Those drill holes were placed in 2012 and 2013. They haven't been followed up. We intend to do that in this round of drilling. But I think the possibility is good that we'll be able to show that that's another epithermal feeder. Certainly those are coarse-grained intercepts, 9 meters at 10 grams or almost 11 grams, and 11 meters at about 6 grams of gold. So we need to do some more drilling to follow that one up. Nevertheless, we haven't drilled below about 400 meters. 375 meters is the deepest drill hole shown here at targets A and B. We want to extend target C down, and we think we can extend target A and B as well as a long strike to depth. So those are the objectives in this round of drilling. And as I said, we're targeting about 15,000 meters of drilling. We should have that done by the end of the year if we can get 4 drills going. A quick note on the metallurgical studies. As I mentioned before, the metallurgy that we did in 2014 on the low-grade material showed relatively low recoveries. That certainly put a hamper on the project because people believe that this was a refractory deposit. We put out in earlier this year, we did a fair amount of work on the sulfide metallurgy on the high-grade sulfides. And we've shown that in the epithermal feeders, which is the high-grade material we're hitting now, we can get up to 50% gravity recovery. And using a standard gravity float leach circuit, we can get up to 80 to 88% recovery from that coarse-grained late epithermal mineralization. The graph in the lower part, the gold leach kinetics, the lower lines are the low-grade disseminated mineralization, same results that we had in 2014. That material is not really interesting to us at this point. I think it would be interesting to someone like Barrick or Newmont. It does float well. It does get good gravity recoveries, but it does require a secondary processing, some form of oxidation. The upper 2 lines are the are the coarse-grained epithermal mineralization that we're drilling now, the higher-grade material. That shows good recoveries, and it's grind size insensitive. Those two lines, the lower line's at 30 micron and the upper line's at 75 micron, insensitive to grind sizes. The upper charts show the oxide metallurgy. There's not much to say about the oxide metallurgy. This stuff falls out in column tests. We get 85% recovery in 7 days, which is astounding for oxide mineralization. It's right up there at the top end. This stuff is amenable to heap leaching or a tank leach. And as I said, we'll put together a preliminary feasibility study, most likely looking at a heap, but we've got some trade-off studies to do on that first, and we'll have more to say later on in the year on the oxide portion. This is a diagram of the oxide mineralization itself. If you look at the underlying topographic contours, there's a hill, and the colored contours are the grade or the gram meter contours within the area of the projected pit. But this drapes over top of the topography, so it's more of an earth moving exercise. The oxide is about 20 to 30 meters thick in total thickness, so it will not be a deep pit. But certainly, I think we've done enough work on this that we can go directly to a preliminary feasibility study on it. Metallurgy is complete, and we should be able to deliver that economic study in the second half of this year. There will be a resource update. Micon has been working on the resources for this and putting together a pit and delivery schedules from the pit and mining schedules. We should be able to have that resource update out shortly, certainly by the end of the month. I'm hoping next week. We're just waiting for Micon to deliver the final results. Just a quick note on some of the regional exploration targets that we have. Once again, we've spent most of our time in the lower left stars on that map in the Candelones area. There does seem to be a main gold trend that's about 10 kilometers long by about 2 kilometers wide that goes up towards the targets we're calling MGN, which are 3 targets further to the east. Those ones are very interesting. There's rhyolites and there's a large quartz feldspar porphyry that outcrops there. We've had rock and grab samples up to 10 grams per ton, and trenching returned 10 meters at 4 grams per ton. There were some short drill holes put in the 2010 to 2013 seasons when we were drilling, but that was before we recognized the late stage epithermal overprinting to the mineralization. The information that we've now assembled through the last 5 years of drilling at Candelones will help us in our exploration toolbox as we move into those other areas to look at those again. And I suspect that there will be other epithermal feeders that we'll be able to key in on. We now understand the alteration around them, and we understand the structure that's controlling them. So we'd like to get a chance to get over to MGN and drill those out. The surface geochem anomalies and the surface geophysical anomalies that are there are larger than the Candelones area. It's just a matter of getting the drills over and looking at those, and that's something we'll most likely do early next year. There's a number of other targets as well. All of those stars, as I said before, are drill-ready targets, and we'll prioritize some of those and try to move some drills onto those early next year as well to look to see if we can expand the ounces that are there. The rest of the presentation is really supplemental information. It does show the mineral resource estimate from 2013 and 2015, which gives you a breakdown on that as well as the cutoffs. There are 43101 reports filed on CDAR, and they're available on our website as well if anyone wants more information on those. The last couple of slides are the conceptual model for the mineralization and how it was formed. Very briefly, I'll run through that. It appears as though the first stage of mineralization was a massive sulfide deposit. There's a picture of it. It's very fine-grained. And that's fairly low grade. It's about 0.5 gram of gold per ton. Not very interesting stuff, but it was the first mineralization in the area, fairly old. As things moved on, there was a lot of ash from active volcanoes that were set on top of these mounds. The hydrothermal vents kept going, and it looks as if they flooded the ash tuffs that were laid down with sulfide-bearing solution. That's where the disseminated mineralization comes in that we drilled in 2010 through 2013. That's low grade 1 to 2 gram material and somewhat refractory. Once again, not interesting to us, but maybe interesting to a larger company with deeper pockets. as time went on, the strata tilted, earthquakes, more volcanic activity. It broke up and fractured. You can see a picture of some of the breccias that come in the area, well-rounded fragments, reworked breccias. But very late in the game, as the volcanism carried on in the area, were these epithermal feeders that came in on reactivated faults. They happened to find good porosity and permeability in the brecciated material, and they really overprint it. And some of the diagrams there, you'll see chalcopyrite and pyrite sulfides as matrix filling with a lot of good clean quartz, some alunite in there as well. And as you would expect, epithermal textures coming in as well. So that's really the conceptual model we're dealing with, and we're targeting that late epithermal mineralization. And that is the end of my presentation.
Hi, Joe. I have questions.
Here we are.
You haven't put out a resource update since 2015, but you are putting one out in the next month or so. Is that correct?
Correct. The resource update that we'll put out is primarily on the oxide portion, although it will include a restatement of the previous resources that we had there.
Okay, and so from the drill results that you were talking about on target A, B, and C, which ones will be included in that?
None.
Okay.
We're not doing, from those, we'll end up doing a high-grade resource subset towards the end of this year when we finish this round of drilling. What I'd like to do is I don't want to put out a resource on the high-grade sulfides until we're sure internally that we can hit the 1.2 to 1.5 million ounce number. If we can hit that number at 5 to 6 grams, then I can certainly put my hand over my heart and look at the street and say, we can do 120 to 150,000 ounces a year for an 8 to 10 year period with this resource, targeting a 5 to 6 gram head grade, which is I think a sustainable underground mine and one that would draw a lot of attention. So we'd like to get to that level internally, and then we'll put out a resource statement. I think this round of drilling will get us there.
Okay. And then in terms of other projects in the area or M&A, things like that, is there anything you're looking at? Are there any other assets in the Dominican that are of interest?
There are a large number of other assets. I mean, the exploration in the Dominican has been slow. There's really only been 2 companies that have been doing any major exploration over the last 10 years. We're the largest explorer in the country. We've been spending more money and more time and effort than anyone else. There is one other deposit. Goldquest has a deposit in the country, but they haven't been doing any work for the last 5 years in the country. So it's really suffering from a lack of exploration. And I think that if we can show that there's major deposits here, which I think we're well on our way to doing, hopefully we'll get more people involved in doing exploration to show some more projects. So there's certainly no end of very prospective property and very pregnant mineralized systems.
Okay, and so you think you can get to that resource size and that potential production based on what you currently have in your portfolio?
Correct, just at the Candelones. Some of the other exploration targets we have, I think, are equally prospective to Candelones. We just haven't had an opportunity to go out and look at them for 5 years. Once we get more drills in the country, I think, and finish this round of drilling on the sulfides, then we'll be able to apportion a few drills to go out and do exploration.
So currently you have 2 drills in the country and 2 that you're waiting on, is that correct?
That's correct. We have 2 drills in country. I almost call them 1.5 drills at this point. Those drills are 12 years old. They've been kept in good shape, but we need to do overhauls on both of them. We'll start our drill program next week with them, and then we've ordered 2 new drills, which should be in country by the middle of September if everything goes according to plan. And then we'll start drilling with those ones and do an overhaul on each of the 2 older drills, so that by the middle of October we should have 4 relatively clean drills operating for the rest of the year.
And you can drill right through to the spring?
No worries. Although the Dominican Republic does have hurricanes, they do hit. Hurricane is usually restricted to the coast as far as any major impact is concerned. We're well inland. We've had a number of hurricanes over the last 10 years that we've been working here. We've only had to shut down 1 day over hurricane season over the 10-year period. So we can work year-round in the Dominican Republic. It's not an issue.
Sounds like a horrible place to have to drill, Joe.
This time of year, July, August, can be brutally hot. But the rest of the year is quite beautiful.
And so when people are thinking about Unigold, I mean, historically, there's been some pushback on the metallurgy, on resource size. I think you've done a lot since you've been CEO, since I think it was October last year.
That's correct.
To get the story out, change the story, make sure people's perception of it is really what it is now. So how would you describe it in like 3 to 5 points? What is Unigold currently?
It's 120,000 meters of drilling, about $44 million project. It's a 2 million ounce resource that's growing. Every drill hole we put in shows that the resource is growing. The grades we're getting are economic grades. Certainly at $2,000 gold, they're economic grades. So all we need to do now is move the project towards that economic decision point, define the project. But you know, you've got a considerable amount of work where this is not a grassroots exploration program. This is an advanced brownfields program that's moving towards an economic decision point. And I think if you look at the thicknesses and the grades and understand, you know, the other types of deposits that are out there, this one is unique. It's well mineralized, consistent mineralization over very thick sequences. And I think it should turn out to be a relatively robust underground mine, you know, mining these gold-bearing sulfides.
And you just closed a raise in July, I believe, for $6 million, and you put out your budget 2 weeks ago. Can you just run us through exactly what you've earmarked for drilling, exploration, in-country development, things like that?
Yes. The budget itself came in at about $4.9 million. That included about $800,000 in capital expenditures. That was mostly for drill parts, drill refits, as well as the purchase of 1 new drill. We expanded that to 2 new drills, so that one's gone up a little bit. We apportioned about $500,000 for IR and community relations work, and approximately another $300,000 to $400,000 for 6 months of G&A. So that comes out to about $1.8 million. We apportioned the difference then, $3.1 million was completely into drilling and technical studies. That will include about $250,000 in metallurgical studies to complete the metallurgy and the process plant design, the sulfide work, which is getting underway now. We also have some more geophysics that we want to do, but primarily the bulk of that $3.1 million will be in drilling. And we're targeting 15,000 meters of drilling, which will be about $2 million. And I believe that number will go probably closer to, you know, let's say 20,000 meters of drilling, which will be about $2.5 million in drilling towards the end of the year.
Okay. And so we recently saw each other and you had your Geo West with you, and I got to spend some time with him, and he explained something to me about Unigold that I didn't fully understand before, so I'm going to make you explain it. So he was talking about these gaps that he wants to drill in this program. Can you explain exactly what he's talking about and why he thinks that that's potentially some interesting results?
Absolutely. There's a
slide, because I think it might help.
Let's see if I can track this one down. This would be slide 12. You can see that there's an area between Candelones main, which is on the left-hand side of the slide, and the Candelones extension deposit, which is on the right-hand side. But the Candelones connector area is poorly drilled. There's just not a lot of drill holes in there. There's only 8,000 meters of drilling in that. And that gap area between the two deposits is something that is, that Wes, our chief operating officer, has done a lot of work on as far as looking at the geophysics and the geochemistry in there again, and looking at the structural geology and the faults that are cutting through there. He's excited about the fact that there may be another one of these epithermal feeders coming in there. Certainly some of the alteration in the older drill holes in that 8,000 meters of drilling seems to imply that there may be another system, but the drill holes either didn't go deep enough or just missed it. So that's one of the gap areas that Wes would like to spend some more time on. And I think that's high percentage exploration. It's between two bookends, as it were, with mineralization on both sides and just scantily drilled. There's another gap area. If I go down here to slide 14, the area in between B and C is fairly wide. There's a couple of higher grade hits in there, 5 meters or 6 meters at 9 grams and sort of 8 meters at 6 grams that haven't been followed up. I'd like to do more work in that area as well, in the central part. There's another gap between B and C that really doesn't have much drilling. If you look at the pierce points that come through there, it could use a lot more drilling. And certainly the textures in there look like there may be another epithermal there. So, once again, that's easy exploration. We can set the drills up and get right on top of that. But hopefully if we can show 1 or 2 more of these feeders, we could be at 2 million ounces fairly quickly.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I found it really fascinating. And I'm looking forward to getting, I think you said you have 1 more round of drill results from the previous program coming out.
There's 1 more drill hole, which was from target C, which was stuck in the country in March when the COVID lockdown came down. That's now at the lab in Vancouver. Hopefully we'll get those results in the next few days. And that was the same thing that the drill results that we put out on Monday of this week, the 30 meters at 9 grams, was a drill hole that was completed in March, but we couldn't get the samples out of the country until June. So this is another one. There were a number of holes that were in progress at the time that didn't get through mineralization. One of them, I believe, had a partial hit. And we'll see we'll wait to see what those results come back from the lab. But there is 1 more completed drill hole that needs to be put out. So our news flow over the next, 4 to 6 weeks, we'll have 1 more drill hole to be put out shortly. There'll be a resource update coming from Micon on the oxide portion of the deposit. We should start drilling next week, and we'll do remote logging on this. It's difficult to move expats into the country to do geological logging, so we're going to do it remotely. We have high resolution cameras on site. And the Dominican employees that we have are perfectly capable of positioning drills and of sampling core. The sampling techs have been doing it for 10 years and getting the samples to the lab with the appropriate standards and blanks and duplicates in place. So we'll be able to establish that. I'm hoping that we'll have our first drill results in mid-September coming out. So that's sort of the news flow over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then new drills arriving in September.
Well, I think it's exciting, and the last year's been really active for Unigold, and I think with the budget that you have and the plans that you have, that's only going to increase over the coming months, so should be exciting. The stock's moved a lot since the financing closed. I believe it was 18 cents with a 30-cent half warrant, and stock's been trading as high as, I think, 60 cents. Did it hit 60?
The high, I think, was 67.
Yeah. But when you look at it versus like junior developers, like I don't see it being all that expensive. It's like $35 an ounce in the ground, and I think the peer group's somewhere around $50 or $60 an ounce. So I think there's still potential to re-rate higher in line with peer group. Plus, you've got all this drilling that you've done over the last 5 years that's not included in the resource, plus more planned. So I think there's definitely significant potential to upsize your resource over the coming months and years. So good job, Joe.
I would agree. Thank you.
I have 1 question from the audience. They're asking about institutional following. And yeah, on the back of the share price performance, have you seen any brokers interested in covering the story?
I've been in touch. I worked as an analyst on Bay Street for a number of years. I know. And managed to retire from that. I've been in touch with quite a few analysts. Getting analysts to pick up coverage is sometimes not an easy thing until you've got a defined project with defined cash flows that they can model and put a valuation on a project. Certainly in touch with a number of analysts, and we'll see if we can get coverage going later on this year. As far as institutional ownership is concerned, the last 4 financings we've done between 2015 and today were all non-brokered. A lot of the larger funds don't want to participate in non-brokered financings. Which is, fine. Perhaps the next one, if we can get some brokers interested, would be a brokered financing, which would increase our institutional ownership. To date, we don't have a lot of institutions that own it. There are a number of small family-run funds that do own it, but our I would suggest that our institutional ownership is probably less than 20%. But with 6 phone calls, I can find about 45 to 50% of the stock between directors and Mr. Sprott and a few other holders. So it's a pretty tightly held stock as far as float's concerned.
I think you got a wider investor base on the last financing too. A number of retail investors, high net worth, and some institutional. I don't have any other questions. Joe, is there anything else that you think people should keep in mind when they're thinking about Unigold and the upcoming results?
Well, not at all. You know, the only thing that I think people should remember is we will clearly lay out what our objectives are. We'll clearly lay out how we're going to get there, and we'll knock it off. And you can hold my feet to the fire at the end of the year if I haven't hit the targets that I've set for ourselves. So as a company, we'll do that, and we'll deliver what we said we're going to deliver. And hopefully along the way, we'll get some recognition for it. It's sort of 10 years of hard work, and you get to be an overnight success.
All right. Well, I do have one other question, and I actually don't know the answer to this. So someone participating lives in the Dominican, and they're wondering how they invest in the project from there.
Well, that's it's a good question. You can buy our stock on the Toronto Stock Exchange through the Venture Exchange. If you have certainly an account or a broker in Canada, they can do that fairly easily. Brokers in the U.S. can place orders on the Toronto Stock Exchange, just an accredited exchange. It's a little bit more. There's a little bit more paperwork to be done, but you can certainly put an order through a broker in a U.S. base to do that. And frequently, there are brokerage houses in the Dominican Republic. Frequently, those brokers will have agreements with Canadian brokers in order to do trades on the Canadian market. So the best thing I can tell you is ask your broker. And we do trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange, the Venture Exchange under UGD, and it's fairly liquid.
Interesting. Well, I know that one of your objectives is to get deeper roots within the Dominican communities, so maybe you could get some new shareholders.
Well, absolutely. No, that's something that we would like to do, and that we'll spend some effort doing so. Is allowing Dominicans to participate in the development of the resources in their own country. It only makes sense. So we'll carry on with that.
Yeah, and with the rebranding that we did, we tried to incorporate some of the Dominican colors, make it a little bit more nationalistic.
Of course.
Anyway, well, I don't have any other questions, so thank you very much, Joe, for taking the time to update us on Unigold, and I think everyone's excited about the next round of draw results. The ones you just put out contain the best hole ever, so what do you got for us next?
Yeah, I know. That's what that's a question for Wes Hansen, but he's up to the task.
Great. Well, I look forward to that, and yeah, thanks for your time.
Well, thank you, and thank you everyone for attending.